All right, let's dive right in. We're going to break down the absolutely stunning reports of a U.S. military operation to capture Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro. We're going straight to the source material to figure out exactly what was reported and how this whole thing went down.
We're actually going to start at the end with this one. Almost cinematic image. I mean, can you picture it? A captured leader flying right past the Statue of Liberty? It's just this incredibly powerful visual that perfectly captures the dramatic finale to a story that unfolded with unbelievable speed and secrecy. So first up, the capture itself. But this wasn't just some political power play. No, the entire operation was actually framed as the final step in a massive law enforcement action. And look at these charges, officially confirmed by the Department of Justice. These are the key to the entire legal justification for what happened. We're talking narco-terrorism, cocaine importation, machine guns. This is serious stuff. The U.S. position was that they weren't just going after a political leader, they were arresting fugitives. And that framing, right there, is absolutely crucial for understanding everything that comes next. Okay, but how? How does a military operation this complex, involving thousands of people, stay a complete secret until it's over? Well, let's go inside the takedown. The timeline here just shows you how fast this all moved. So you've got the initial green light on New Year's Eve, but the final go order doesn't come until late on a Friday night, and then bam! Within just a few hours, the entire world knew. From the first explosions in Caracas to the president's announcement a little over 2 hours later, the speed was just breathtaking. A swift, decisive strike. And the strategy wasn't some simple raid. The source actually calls it a layering effect. It kicked off with months of intense CIA intelligence gathering. They even built a full replica of Maduro's compound to practice on. Then you have these simultaneous strikes to take out defenses and knock out the power grid. Only after all that did the elite teams, guys like Delta Force and the Night Stalkers, move in for the actual capture. And the scale of this whole thing? Get this. Reportedly, 20,000 U.S. service members were involved. The fact that an operation of that sheer size could be pulled off without a single leak, frankly, it's pretty remarkable. President Trump described the target as a fortress, and this quote really gives you a sense of just how prepared they were. They showed up ready for a siege, with massive blowtorches to get through steel. But the most telling part of that quote? We didn't need it. The execution was reportedly so clean, so precise, that all that heavy-duty gear wasn't even necessary. So how in the world did the administration legally justify an action this extraordinary? Let's take a look at the official reasoning they put forward.
Okay, here's the absolute heart of the administration's argument. They insisted they were not invading a country or deposing a head of state. No, they were simply executing a legal indictment from 2020. From their perspective, Nicolás Maduro was an indicted fugitive, which makes this whole thing an act of international law enforcement, not an act of war.
And, they'll tell you this isn't without precedent. Supporters of the move point straight back to 1989, when President George H.W. Bush sent U.S. forces into Panama to arrest its leader, Manuel Noriega, who, sound familiar, was also facing drug trafficking charges in the U.S. This quote from Senator Tom Cotton really boils the whole justification down, doesn't it? The analogy is pretty simple. If the FBI doesn't need to ask Congress for permission to go arrest a drug trafficker, why should the executive branch need permission to arrest an indicted person overseas? It's a powerful way to reframe a huge military operation as a simple police action. Of course, not everybody was buying that justification. Not by a long shot. The reaction in the U.S. was instant, and it was sharply divided, even inside the same political party. I mean, just look at this. On one side, you had Democrats calling the action illegal, unauthorized, even an impeachable offense. But on the other side, you had other prominent Democrats calling it welcome news and a major step. It just goes to show you how complicated and polarizing this whole event really was. But maybe the strongest criticism came from Senator Bernie Sanders. By comparing the logic here to Vladimir Putin's justification for invading Ukraine, he's basically framing the action not as law enforcement, but as a really dangerous violation of international law and a nation's sovereignty. So, with Maduro captured, the big question is, now what? I mean, the entire future of Venezuela, its government, its people, its economy, is suddenly hanging in the balance. And the stakes here are just immense. And a huge piece of that puzzle is this number, 300 billion. That's barrels of proven oil reserves, the largest on the entire planet. So any conversation about Venezuela's future is, at its core, a conversation about its massive energy resources.
Now, according to the reports, the administration's plan is pretty direct. The U.S. apparently intends to run the country for a while to make sure there's a safe, proper, and judicious transition. And part of that plan seems to involve bringing in American oil companies to help restart the country's devastated production. But as for who's actually going to lead Venezuela in the long run, well, that is a huge open question. And finally, you have to realize that the shockwaves from this go way beyond Venezuela. This quote from Secretary of State Marco Rubio, well, it's a clear message to other countries in the region. The action in Venezuela is absolutely being presented as a warning shot, basically saying that what happened in Caracas could, theoretically, happen somewhere else.
So this all leaves us with the one central question that really sums up the entire conflict. Was this an act of justice? Or was it a violation of sovereignty? Was it the legitimate arrest of a dangerous fugitive? Or was it an unauthorized act of aggression? You know, how the world decides to answer that question will ultimately define the legacy of this entire event.